And while I'm pouring this, I'm just going to let you know that as a general rule, when you're selecting beer, to find out if it's an ale or a lager, the easiest thing to do is look at the bottle or the can. And I have found in 90% of the cases, if it's a lager, it will say lager somewhere. Like, for example, this says Kostritzer Schwarzbier, but if you look right here, it says black lager beer. And that's in about 90% of the cases. The one notable exception is Pilsners. A Pilsner is always a lager, and it won't necessarily state that it's a lager on the can.
You usually say Pilsner, though.
It will say Pilsner, absolutely, for sure. And we're just going to pour, actually, the London Porter right away and put them side by side so we can better observe the difference. So I did want you to notice, as I'm pouring these, that they do look quite similar.
They're both a very dark color.
Both very dark color. I mean, if you were to look at these beers, would you know which one was an ale, which one was a lager?
No, because I'm untrained, I don't know, but I do notice a difference in the head, in the formation of the head. I mean, the color is remarkably similar between the two.
Yeah, that's why I chose them. And even though the head is a little bit fuller on the London Porter, and that's something that is probably due slightly to the style, but also due to the pour, by looking at them, there really is no way to tell.
Okay.
I will notice often that people, if they see both these beers, will assume that they're both ales because they associate a darker beer with an ale. So let's just have a smell, and we'll start with the one on the left, which is the Kostritzer. And definitely we're swirling it around to release those aromas. And you'll find that there's a mild aroma. It's a little bit roasted.
It's not an overpowering aroma at all. I don't get any sort of. There's no one note that I'm able to pull out of this, but that just could be my untrained nose.
Okay, let's just put that down without thinking any further and smell the other one. Now, what you will notice is this one is a lot fruitier. It has some esters in it. That's the fruitiness. We're going to talk about that later. And in general, there's a few more things going on.
Yeah.
It's a little bit more complex. And that has to do with the way that the different yeasts work, the different yeast strains, and how they work under different temperatures. So a lager is fermented using lager yeast. It's bottom fermented, as we said, at a lower temperature, and it also takes a lot longer to ferment at the lower temperature. So you want to think that that lager is working very slowly, very meticulously, and based on its character, it's going to create a flavor that is very clean and crisp. Whereas an ale is working at a higher temperature, therefore it's top fermenting, and it's just a lot more active. It's a kind of yeast that, you know, if you think about warmer weather, you're more active, you know, and it's going to create a lot more byproducts and a much richer flavor. And that's something we're also going to touch on a little bit more later on. But that's the basic difference. So let's taste them and see if that follows through in the flavor. So tasting this, right away you know that there's roasted malt in there.
Yeah, you can really taste that.
Get the roast very clearly. You getting anything else?
I'm mostly getting the roasted malt.
Mostly roast. Very straightforward. All right, let's try the next one.
There's a much larger complexity of the flavor with this one.
The roast is still there.
Yep. But there's a lot more.
A lot more going on, and that's not because fruit was added. There might be a slightly more complex grain bill in this one. I'm not sure. But that's mostly due to the fact that it's an ale, and there's a lot going on in terms of yeast byproducts. So you can immediately think about the fact that this is a crisper beer, this is a richer beer, and automatically with foods you can sort of start to associate, you know, a cleaner, crisper, I think chicken, you know, turkey, richer, I'm thinking darker meats, game meats. See what I'm saying? Just in terms of a general rule.
More complex dishes would suit this beer much better, So we've determined,
as a general rule, the difference between an ale and a lager. We've determined how to tell which is very important when you're shopping. And I did want to bring up one notable exception, and this is something that we're going to be talking about later on. And as I was saying about yeasts, they do at higher temperatures do crazier things.
Okay.
And they also, when they're fed more, they will do crazier things.
Okay.